Hello and welcome back everybody to the Foodbuild factory, where today we're going to take a look at the Legion Standart-Carrier. That's the guy you can see on screen right now. And as always, I'm going to show you some gameplay in the first part of the video, and in the second part of the video, we're going to take a look at the perks, mutations, and everything else you need to know. Now, this is the second entry in my Fallout New Vegas week, where we're trying to recreate characters or appearances that could belong to that game. And as you can probably tell already, this is going to be a Legion character. Now, on first sight, this is a bit of an odd character, and as I said in yesterday's video, or no, the day before yesterday actually, um, creating a Legion character was kind of hard in this game. Now, I tried this for a bit over a year, every now and then, like 3 or 4 tries. And while on first glance it was relatively easy, especially one thing you can do relatively well is going with the color scheme, talking about red and white and overall the appearance. It's relatively easy, but then once you're looking into the details and actually go back, look at the Legion characters from Fallout New Vegas, it's not that easy anymore because, well, the problem is that the armor that the Legion actually wore in Fallout New Vegas, it's pretty much all repurposed sports gear. And for some reason, I don't know, misremembered the way they look actually. They do have a lot of detail on their armor, and yeah, that's just something you simply can't look too deeply into. Uh, Otherwise, it's very hard to recreate the character. But I thought this Atom Shop item that came on in the Atom Shop like a week ago, or not even a week ago, actually fitted very well. I mean, it's probably too Roman, actually, in order to really work for the Legion, but for the first sight, it works relatively well. Then another big thing was the headwear. And while the Imposter Sheep Squatch helmet that we wear here doesn't really resemble anything we do see in Fallout New Vegas, I actually felt like it was quite fitting after all, because think about Vulpes in Colta, for example, who wore this wolf head, this wolf hood, and something like this seems like a high-ranking Legion character would probably wear something like this. And same goes for the weapon we're using, the Sheep Squatch stuff. Now, the standard, I'm not quite sure actually how commonly known the word standard actually is, but if you can remember, in Lonesome Road, the final DLC for Fallout New Vegas, you could actually get a standard from Legion that you could use as a weapon, and I think like the Sheep Squatch stuff resembles that quite well. Now, in all reality, the Sheep Squatch stuff was always a bit of an odd weapon because I did quite like it, but it always feels a little bit ridiculous even because just of the sheer size and the scale of the thing. It's really a bit odd. One thing I find odd especially is how the handle seems to be a bit short. It should stick out a little bit on the left side of the character, but that's just personal preference. Well, anyways, overall this is a fairly straightforward melee character, so there's not exactly any real twist that we're using here. Um, the weapon we're using is an anti-armor swing speed sheep squatch stuff. I actually do carry a vampire swing speed version as well, but I felt like I didn't really want to use that because the last melee character I did was actually using a vampire's weapon as well. But keep in mind it would just make you a lot more tankier, and the overall damage difference isn't too crazy compared to our anti-armor swing speed version that we're carrying here, for the simple reason that you do get a ton of armor penetration from the Incisor perk already. So one thing you could do with this weapon, something I tried a little bit with, is actually not use Incisor and just work with the armor penetration that comes from your weapon itself, and instead use something like Blocker in order to boost your survivability a little bit. But yeah, that's just little tidbits and fine tuning that you should look for yourself what you actually prefer. Now, I really hope this Scorch Beast here is going to land because, yeah, as it's often the case with my melee characters, I do not carry a shotgun around in order to cripple the Scorch Beast, but yeah, turns out that he did land actually, and well, let's just get rid of this guy in the meantime and hope that the Scorch Beast doesn't, yeah, go back into the air again, but yeah, just as I said it, he actually went into the air again. Now, it gives us a little bit of room to talk more about the character itself. Another thing about the aesthetic was that, yeah, I am using this here Super Mutant backpack. It actually is worn by a lot of Super Mutants in the game, and I felt like this was quite fitting for the Standart-Carrier, for the simple reason that you want to be imposing on the battlefield and want to be this big bulky guy that shows off a lot of his armor and gives a big appearance here. So I think the whole look really turned out very well. I also included the skull mask. The combination of skull mask with the imposter sheep squatch helmet is not rare exactly. A lot of people do it. It's a very well, it works together very well, let's say it that way. And I felt like this also was quite fitting for a Legion character for some reason. Um, Melee was an obvious choice for the Legion. While they did actually carry quite a lot of guns and so on in the game, I felt like they always, yeah, the first thing I thought about when thinking of the Legion was definitely melee. That was their big thing. Another weapon we could have used here was the machete, which was actually the first go-to approach for me, but it then turned out that, yeah, it wasn't all that great actually. Um, the machete that you have in Fallout New Vegas just looks so much different the compared to the machete that you get in this game here. So yeah, that was that. I'm just waiting, by the way. Yeah, we do have another mutant hound here. Okay. I was hoping that we could end those guys and just heal by using our healing factor mutation, but turned out that it was a bit risky, so I went for a Stimpack after all here. One thing you may have noticed is when we were fighting the Scorch Beast and fighting around fissure sites overall, works very well with this character since we're using a combination of Ghoulish, which heals your HP when you're under the influence of radiation, combined with the What Rats perk, so we lose those those rats at the same time. So that works out very well, meaning that at Scorched Earth, or if you're fighting Scorched Beast, if you're fighting around fissure sites, you're actually doing very well, because while you may need some time to take down enemies, because melee just has kind of an upper limit actually, if you're not including food buffs a lot. While that's the case, and you may need a little while, you can really be very tanky in such situations. So that's a big thing for the character. Now, where tankiness kind of wears off a little bit is sustained fights against ranged enemies. Um, that's simply because, yeah, we have to close the gap between characters and ourselves. In the meantime, we were getting shot, and we do heavily rely on Vanguard's armor, meaning that once like third of our health is gone, we really take more and more damage. So at the moment we are at the point of diminishing returns, meaning that the first few shots really don't take a lot of our armor away. But yeah, as I said, once we're getting into the realm of like 2/3 of our health or something, we get more squishy and squishy. So what you want to do is you really want to end fights as quickly as possible. And yeah, on this occasion here, these Mr. Gutsies, they are just very dangerous. They do have a lot of DPS since they do use armor penetrating bullets, and therefore, yeah, our defense rating doesn't matter all that much. That's the big problem here. Similar thing can happen with super mutants, especially since the um, locations we are going to clear out, meaning Huntersville and West Tech. In those situations, super mutants tend to be very crowded, and they do have a lot of time to shoot at you while you run between them and try to kill them off. So While the first few go down relatively quickly, there will be a point sooner or later where they overwhelm us a little bit. So those are fights where you really want to have stim packs going. One thing you can actually do, I didn't really bother to do that here, that would be really fitting for the character in terms of lore, actually. I mean, not that this is a lore-friendly build or anything. The Legion isn't around for another 200 years or so. Or, well, maybe not 200 years, but 150, 180 years, something like that. So it's not really a lore-friendly character, but if you want to make it a little bit more lore-friendly, what the Legion does is they don't really believe in modern medicine, meaning they carry around healing powder rather than stim packs. And while we don't have healing powder in the game, one thing we actually do have is healing salves, and they do heal for quite a bit less than stim packs, but they would work very well. You can craft them yourself. They're actually relatively easy to get in bigger amounts if you want to put in the time. So if you maybe want to make a afternoon where you're just farming the resources, you can probably easily get around 200 of these healing souls. They also work with automatic stimpack perks or armor effects, so if you have one of those, you can actually use that um, in tandem with the healing souls. But yeah, that's about it. Now, here we do have another ghoul, so let's just take him down. Now, one or two more rats, and then we're going. One thing you can do with this character is you can actually work with quite a lot of different melee weapons. There are quite a few that are very fitting for the character. So in addition to the sheep squatch stuff, you can also use the sheep squatch club, obviously, going for gladiator rather than slugger. But another weapon that worked really well and I was actually tempted to use for this here character was the Grognax Axe. Like, you don't really see any Legion member in New Vegas running around with an axe or something, but it just felt rather fitting and not maybe not for a standard Legionnaire or something, but you really want to justify it as being one of a higher rank, and so therefore you want to be a bit more unique. Think about Legate Lanius, for example, who would carry this big ass bumper sword, and the blade of the West, was it was it called like that? I'm not entirely sure, but I think you know what I'm going for here. So, as you probably notice, I'm not talking a whole lot about the character itself and how it works out uh, compared to my other videos, but simple reason here is that there's not a whole lot to talk about. This is just a very solid and straightforward melee build, full health obviously, so yeah, for obvious reasons, if you go the low health route, you do have way more strength, which would be very beneficial for your damage output, and in addition to that, yeah, you do have more agility, so you can actually use more power attacks. You do have more damage just from using a bloodied weapon itself, adrenal reaction, all that kind of stuff. So that would definitely be a good route here, but other than that, I find that on melee weapons it's kind of hard to find a good legendary effect because most options aren't working out so great. For example, Furious, um, well, even a fast swing weapon, you need a whole lot of swings and time in order to get the full effect of the Furious legendary effect. Then Junkies, something I do like quite a bit, but you really have to look out in order to get debuffs from your addictions so you don't get debuffs to your endurance or your strength. More importantly, the strength actually. And yeah, anti-armor isn't as beneficial as it is on most weapons for the simple reason that you have such a potent armor penetration perk, meaning that, yeah, you're already ignoring 75% of all armor just by using Incisor, meaning that, yeah, you are left with 25% armor of your enemy, and, well, at that point, your 50% less armor from the effect only take away 12.5% of the overall armor from your enemy. So it's not the most efficient thing here, but it's just a solid option. I would love to just use the Vampire Swing Speed version, and maybe we're switching. Might be a good idea just to switch things around, since I'm already carrying it anyways. Doesn't make a whole lot of a difference though, so Probably, yeah. When we're fighting the Scorch, uh, okay, a bit carried away here. If you're fighting the super mutants down the cliff, there we'll probably see a good difference because we just have some constant healing going on, and yeah, that's it. So let's take this one down. We do have a mutant war drum. I guess it will be a 1-star, but we're going to take a look at it soon. Um, Already being a mutant's war drum, I'm pretty sure I'm not going to be interested in that weapon. Yeah, I mean it's a 3-star, so I don't really want to script it. I don't really want to leave it there. It's good script, so yeah, let's just take it with us. So as you can see here, the approach with this character is very easy. You don't have to worry about a whole lot. Um, I do have a full set of Vanguard's marine armor, but which is relatively good. But it's not. It's just a fitting 1-star set. I mean, I do have a few versions with higher star ratings, but there's not really anything out of the ordinary there. So it's not a super good set. And in addition to that, it's only modified to welded, I think. I didn't really bother to transfer it to another character who has the plans to modify the weapon, so the armor. So you can keep that in mind. There's a lot of potential to improve your armor rating here, which doesn't make a whole lot of the difference once we approach an enemy, simply because with Vanguards, we are at the part of diminishing returns. I think we are somewhere at around 380 damage and energy resistance, respectively. Just from the top of my head, could be wrong a little bit. So it wouldn't really make a big of a difference when we're approaching an enemy, but what it certainly could help us with is once fights drag on a little bit and we're losing health, yeah, we can stay in that area of diminishing returns for longer. So that would definitely be a benefit. Another noteworthy thing that we're going to take a look at when we're looking at the perks is I actually do run Makeshift Warrior on this occasion. So this is something, if you're watching this video in like half a year or so, okay, I was a bit unprepared here, actually not running a dense chest piece, but I think we were overwhelmed by the super mutants themselves rather than the explosion. Just was at the same time here. And yeah, back to the topic. If you're going to watch this video a while after it came out, it's there's a good chance that Makeshift Warrior won't be worth using. It's just that at the time of recording here, yeah, condition is bugged. So, yeah, a while back, um, Bethesda changed how condition works. So, actually, melee weapons really held on for a long time before you had to repair them. But with the last patch, they kind of reverted that fix. But they already told us that they will reword it back yet again. So it's just a matter of time before, yeah, probably Makeshift Warrior on a build isn't worth it again in order to keep your weapons running. It's just that at the moment it makes a giant difference. Like using this weapon without Makeshift Warrior was a matter of like 20 or 30 minutes of gameplay and the weapon completely broke. And using Makeshift Warrior, it holds on forever. And well, in terms of modifications, well, I guess we're going to take a look at it in a second. So this was it. This was the gameplay part of the video. We're now going to take a look at the mutations, perks, and so on, at the equipment. So if you want to stick with that, stick with me here. And for the others, I hope you enjoyed the build so far. Let's get into it. So under effects, we can see our mutations here. We do have grounded, healing factor. I'm sorry, by the way, it's a bit hot outside and I had to open the window. So yeah, I hope that wasn't too bothersome here. I'm going to close it. And yeah, we do have grounded, healing factor, marsupial, scaly skin, speed demon, talents, twisted muscle, and unstable isotope. So the unnecessary mutations that I didn't bother to remove because their downsides are too little um, are talents and unstable isotope. So unstable isotope, I mean every now and then it's a bit of a benefit. You're exploding into a little bit of a mushroom cloud if melee attackers get a hit on you. So it doesn't really have a downside for us. I just left it in. And talents, well, the negative to agility is definitely a bit of a bummer, but It's not all that much, it's not all that necessary, we're not really focused on using power attacks all the time, and well, I just didn't bother to remove it. It doesn't do anything for us though. The important ones here are grounded, for example, which gives us extra energy resistance, and yeah, we do less damage with energy guns. This would actually include energy gun weapons, but yeah, um, at least for the Sheep Squatch stuff, with the exception of the electrified modification, you shouldn't have any downsides. The flaming one, for example, does fire damage rather than energy damage, so there's no problem there. And the version we are running here is the heavy one, so there's no downside anyways. Just 100% extra energy resistance, which is nice. Then we do have healing factor, which I quite like, especially on melee characters, since basically every single fight you are in, you will leave with less health than you started with. So yeah, just automatically healing back after a fight is nice to have. Now, if you really say you don't want to have the negative to the chem effects, which includes stim packs, you can leave it out, but I just felt like it was a good idea here. Then we do have Marsupial, just a standard perk, standard mutation for pretty much every build. More jump height is nice, bit more carry weight, not as important, but it's basically jump height. Then we do have Scaly Skin, energy and damage resistance increased, quite beneficial here. Now we do have a downside to action points, but yet again, we're not using them for a whole lot. The only thing they are necessary for is sprinting as well as power attacking. In terms of sprinting, since we have so much endurance, we're not really consuming a whole lot of AP while sprinting, so we can go on for ages, even with the debuff. And yeah, in terms of power attacks, we're not necessarily going to use them, and I didn't feel like the debuff was so bad here. Then we do have Speed Demon, which obviously the reload speed doesn't concern us here. We're not using any ranged weaponry that has to be reloaded, but the extra movement speed is definitely nice. Just you're just feeling slower. I mean, you are slower if you're not having the mutation, but it really feels like more of a difference than just 20%. Then talents, we already talked about that, and the last one that we are talking about here is Twisted Muscles, which is very straightforward. 25% extra melee damage, which, yeah, we're taking, and a chance to cripple, which is very nice. Negative gun accuracy, yet again, we're not using guns, and the cripple chance is actually very nice. Now, I would go for the legs on a certain enemies. I'm not entirely sure, but I'm pretty sure you have a chance to cripple the limb that you're actually hitting. So, going for against the sheep squatch, for example, you can just aim at its legs, and sooner or later you're going to break one of them. Um, Actually, that's also helped by the modification on our weapon, which we're going to look at here. So this is our anti-armor swing speed sheep squash stuff. Now, these are kind of rare. You have to get them from the purveyor. They don't really drop at random enemies, but you can also get it from public events, provided you do have the plan for the weapon. But it's relatively straightforward to farm, and these things definitely are floating around and aren't too expensive nowadays. We do have the heavy mutation, the heavy modification. There's a few others. The flaming one or flaming barbed one would probably work the best here and would have the best damage output. But I did like the look of the weighted one, and it also increases our chance to cripple yet again. So, very crippling weapon. Quite cool, works out relatively well, even though we didn't really see that in action here in the video. And yeah, that's basically it about the weapon. There's not a whole lot to talk about. And yeah, swing speed really necessary. I wouldn't go for anything else actually. Then we're going to take a look at our armor here. Um, yeah, Vanguard's AP refresh, Cavalier. Then we have Vanguards with extra radiation resistance. Works relatively well on the Marine armor since it has a bit of radiation resistance inbuilt anyways. And then here we do have another one with AP refresh, more durability, which is nice. This one gives us a bit of extra endurance, which is also cool. The harder to detect while sneaking isn't all that important. And then we have a 1-star version here, leaving us with an overall resistance of 456 damage resistance and 522 energy resistance. So I was quite off by quite a little bit. So as you can see, we do have very good defenses. There's definitely room for improvement here, but we are in a spot where it doesn't really matter anymore. Another good thing is we actually have quite a lot of radiation resistance. That combined with our What Rats perk actually makes it so we don't really have to worry about radiation pretty much ever, unless we're fighting hordes of glowing ghouls or obviously going to a nuke zone, which you still would probably need a hazmat suit or power armor for, but nothing holds you back from using power armor, actually. And lastly, we do have 100 poison resistance from a legendary perk, but we're going to take a look at that in a second. So, firstly, let's take a look at our standard perks here. We do have Strength 15, very obvious for a melee character, shouldn't be a surprise to anyone. Very straightforward approach here with 3 ranks of Slugger maxed out, Martial Artist and Incisor. Already talked about it briefly in the beginning of the video. What you could certainly do is go down to rank 2 of each Slugger perk and use Blocker in addition, just to be more tanky, or leave out Incisor since we already have quite a lot of armor penetration from our weapon. You would definitely lose out on a bit of damage though, especially on the characters where, on the enemies where it's actually important. So I would rather go down to rank 2 of each of the Slugger perks and then throw in Blocker. But that's about it. So very straightforward here. Extra swing speed on top of our swing speed legendary effect. Certainly nice and also brings down the weight of the weapon, which can be quite heavy. And lastly, yeah, Incisor, I already talked about it. Then we have Perception at 1. Since we're not using any of the passive benefits of Perception, we can easily go down here. What you could do is increase it a little bit with Legendary Perception and use something like Glow Sight, for example, or Exterminators. However, Exterminators would have really diminishing returns because it just reduces the or increases your armor penetration when you're going against Mirelurks. And yeah, as I told you, we're already down to what is it? 87.5% armor penetration or something, so there's not a whole lot of room for improvement here. Then we have Endurance at 14, which is actually pretty high, and I just wanted to be more tanky here. So we do have Fireproof, Adamantium Skeleton, and Ghoulish. Those 3 are interesting. Now, Fireproof is very obvious. Adamantium Skeleton reduces our limb damage completely, which I just wanted to go for because, yeah, it's very painful to be crippled on a melee character. And yeah, you're actually doing less damage, I think, if your arms are crippled. If your legs are crippled, your movement speed has a penalty and so on. So, in my opinion, a must-have here. Ghoulish, I just explained it earlier. It's very situational, obviously, but it really makes fighting hordes of ghouls easier, fighting around fissure sites or fighting scorch beasts in general. While it might take a while, you're not in any danger, actually. It's hard for them to outdamage you because they give off radiation and probably heal you for more than they actually um, damage you. Now, there's a little bit of an argument for another armor because we have a lot of radiation resistance, or not a lot, but quite a bit actually. So yeah, that means Ghoulish isn't as effective, but as you saw earlier, it's good enough. So that's something you just have to balance for yourself a little bit. And lastly, we do have Ironclad, which we could definitely live without here. We wouldn't see a whole lot of a difference, but it just makes it so if you're not having our Vanguard effect active, we're still getting into the realms of probably 350 resistances or so. We will have another perk that's similar to it. We're going to take a look at in a second, but the main thing here is I wanted to have high endurance, so you could go for Life Giver, would possibly be a bit more beneficial in this situation, or go for whatever you like. If you're liking food buffs, you can actually, or getting your HP buffed by just being well fed or something. You can go for those kind of perks, or yeah, I'm sure you'll find something here. Then we do have Charisma at 7, very prominent combination in my videos here with Lone Wanderer and Tenderizer, meaning you're getting a buff to your survivability, 20% less damage overall. That's nice to have. And then we have 30% extra AP regen, which is also nice to have, even though we're not necessarily using our AP all that much. Definitely makes a bit of a difference though if we're fighting a boss type enemy where we actually want to get a power attack in every now and then, and therefore armor uh, AP regen is definitely a nice thing. And Tenderizer is pretty self-explanatory. It's one of the must-have builds perks for most builds. Actually, if you have room for it, you can never go wrong with Tenderizer. Yeah, we mostly need more than one hit on enemies, and therefore, yeah, we get a benefit from it pretty much every time we're fighting anything. Then we go to intelligence, where I already explained we do have makeshift warrior at rank 5. This is definitely something you can uh, use other perks here in the future, or probably dump the stat down to intelligence 1 or something. Would make it harder to level up, but in all fairness, that doesn't really matter all that much. Um, Unless you really want to power level and so on, then definitely make room for more intelligence. But yeah, as for the moment, it's just very convenient to have it. And yeah, fighting with melee weapons, they break quite fast at the moment. But it's something that's going to change in the future, probably sooner rather than later. Then we have agility at 11. We do have White Knight here, which I actually would recommend quite a lot for the simple reason that, yeah, on a melee character, you're constantly shot, hit, bitten, and your armor wears down relatively quickly. And White Knight definitely makes a bit difference here, in addition to repairing it being more cheaper. So must have perk in my opinion. Then we do have Adrenaline, which is pretty self-explanatory. It's just more damage if you're fighting multiple enemies, which pretty much always is the case. The only thing I can think of that sometimes happens is that you're running across a single sheep squatch. That can make those guys a bit of a pain. But other than that, pretty much every time you're fighting enemies, there are more than 2 or 3. So it definitely is a beneficial perk here. And lastly, we do have Evasive, which I alluded to a little bit when I was talking about Ironclad. Yet another perk that just gives us more resistances, which isn't all that liked. What you could do is you could go for dodgy, with, which would mess definitely with your power attack ability a little bit. You could go for action boy for yet a bit more penetration, for yet a bit more AP refresh. Through hiker, if you're going to use food buffs a lot, through hiker would probably be a sensitive option, but you do have a ton of carry weight, so arguably not that necessary. And I just find it to be beneficial to be yet a bit more tanky, but keep in mind, one of the perk points you can definitely spare if you want to. And then, as the last one here, we do have Luck 5 with Class Freak and Starch Genes. So this is a very simple combination here. Starch Genes is a must-have. Just lets you keep your mutations, not get any new ones. And Class Freak, yeah, reduces the debuffs. What you could do is go for Bloody Mass, but the difference is very minor. Another thing you could definitely do, which I tended to do for a while, was using Ricochet, especially if you're using a vampire weapon. Definitely use Ricochet. That would just boost your survivability by a lot. But other than that, I just felt like there was nothing necessary. I could argue that you could even go down to Luck 2 and use those points somewhere else. So that's about it for our standard perks. And now let's take a look at the legendary ones. So we do have Funky Dot. Since we are using a matching set of armor, we do get the effect. That was the 100 poison damage resistance that I've shown you earlier, which actually makes it way easier to fight Miler Kings. Legendary Miler Kings can be a pain if they hit you. The Miler Queen actually does a lot of damage over time, which you can greatly reduce with this here perk, and rank 2 is actually enough for most situations. It's hard to be overwhelmed by damage over time with rank 2 of Funky Dots, actually. Then we do have Collateral Damage, which I only have at rank 1, giving us a 10% chance to explode enemies when we're fighting them. Um, Especially useful if you're fighting at the White Spring Golf Club, situations like this where tons of squishy enemies fight you. If it goes off, it can actually take down some nearby enemies with it. And yeah, the thing is, it's very inconsistent in my opinion. Even if you boost it higher up, it doesn't proc all that often, and if it does, sometimes it just doesn't damage enemies nearby. The range seems relatively low, so this is more of a gimmick than an actual thing I use for more power, to be honest. Legendary strength at 5, we are at standard 15 strength, and in addition to that, we have another 5 strength from legendary strength. This is just a straight up boost to our damage, even though it's not all that crazy. Yeah, on paper 5% extra damage per strength to our base strength. It's not a whole lot, but you still want to have a high amount of strength. So there's that. And then we do have one legendary luck, one legendary agility. Those just give us extra room for perks. But yeah, you could live with rank 2 of Class Rig, for example, or rank 2 of evasive. So yeah, those are definitely not necessary for the character. And lastly, I do have Ward Reds. So this is another perk that's just thrown in for convenience. Makes it so I don't have to bother taking a Red X or a Red Away every now and then. Definitely not something you need. Both Red X, Red Away are very abundant in the game. It just spares you the time to actually use them. So it's pretty straightforward here. And that was it in terms of the build. We're now going to take a look at the thumbnail that I've chosen here, which I'm quite proud of. I was actually a bit worried it would turn a bit bland. I didn't really find a fitting background that fits the Legion actually, so I went with a plain background here. And yeah, I hope you enjoyed the build, guys. I was pretty happy with how it turned out. Actually, the look really works in my opinion. If you see it, you definitely think about the Legion. Even though, yeah, if you Google a Legion character and put it side by side with this one here, they're not all that similar actually. But yeah, in terms of what you can do within the realms of Fallout 76, I'm quite happy with the result here, and I actually enjoyed the build a little bit, a whole lot. Um, I hope you didn't find it too boring, too bland. It was actually just a very straightforward melee character, and yeah, I hope you enjoyed it, guys, and see you next time. Bye.